Hi everyone, I'm Brianna Kamahal. I'm the State Legislative Manager at WEACT for Environmental Justice. How do we like the film? Good, I feel the same way. That would have been awkward if we didn't. And I really want to thank you all for coming out and viewing this with us. I want to give a quick overview about cumulative impacts, what that means, which is what we saw a demonstration of, right? We heard from the Covanta directors or managers, we're only 2% of the problem. That's a huge problem, right? They're 2% of this pie that includes all of these facilities that we witnessed in one neighborhood. So that is their 2% is part of this cumulative impact, this cumulative effect of the culmination of pollution that is in one community. And again, mainly because they're Black and brown residents of low income. And that is not, like we saw from the film, all across the United States, an unfortunate, egregious pattern in many communities. So WEACT for Environmental Justice actually was founded in 1988 as a result of a similar pollution fight with a wastewater treatment center that was being placed in Harlem. And it was causing a lot of air pollution. It caused the air to smell like rotten eggs many days because of the pollutants that were being emitted. And residents were upset that they weren't breathing clean air, and it was placed there as a textbook example of environmental racism, because the way the water engineers explained it is Harlem is on a hill compared to Midtown Manhattan, which is where it was originally going to be sited, which is more downhill. And so simply because of how strong their racism was, they placed it in a more inconvenient location than it would have been in Midtown Manhattan. And water engineers had to figure out a problem how to get water up rather than down. So that's one example of how far people will go, or city planners will go, people who make decisions about where to put these facilities will unfortunately place them even in inconvenient locations because of the people that live there. So WEACT was, this again, this was in the 80s, took this fight to the city. We won, and that was the settlements of that was what created WEACT for Environmental Justice. And so this fight continues. Many of the people that were in this film have been fighting for environmental justice for a very long time. And Dr. Sheets was featured in the film at one of the hearings, which is something that we often do. Again, it's unfortunately it is theater to have community residents show up and show their support for why they want something to be stopped, why they want clean air, and we need to continue to show up to these places and be informed of the issues and speak passionately so that we can see change being made. And so what actually has been in effect or being worked on since the making of this film, or while this film was going on, is a movement across the United States. Thank you, Mary Claire. Should I speak on that now? All right. Is that better? How is this? Nice. Even louder, right? Okay. Tell me if I'm too loud. Okay, so a movement across the United States of cumulative impact laws, or environmental justice society laws. And what New Jersey has done historically is pass the first of its kind right here in New Jersey. So give it here in New Jersey, and not in New York, near New Jersey. And Dr. Sheets was very much a part of that, so was Nija. So just round of applause for that, because that was a long time ago. And so what does that mean? I will pass it over to Dr. Sheets in just a moment to explain what that means. And I will kick things off with our wonderful panelists. So first, I'd like to kick it over to Dr. Sheets to tell us what is the cumulative impacts law in New Jersey, and can you reflect on anything you saw from the film to tell us any updates on how things are going, any updates on Covanta, permitting decisions,
Yeah, I'll just pass it on over to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. And it's nice to see people come out on a Monday night to talk about environmental justice. That shows how far the movement has come. A little bit about myself. I'm trained as a scientist and a lawyer. I work at Princeton University now. I've been there a couple of years where I teach environmental justice policy, but that's maybe, well, I don't know. I was teaching before, I forgot how much time teaching takes. I forgot how much time teaching takes, thank you. But I spend the rest of my time when I don't teach working with the environmental justice community in both New Jersey and nationwide. And for the last 22 years, I've been doing that. Before Princeton, I was at Thomas Edison State College and Kane University, where I didn't even teach. All I did was just work all the time with environmental justice communities in New Jersey and around the country. But more importantly, those are the, I gotta say that, those are the people that pay my salary. That's how I live, and help EJ movements, right? Because I'm basically free labor to the EJ movement. But for years, when I worked, at the other colleges, I didn't teach. I just worked with the EJ community. And out of that, one thing that I was involved in is the co-founding of New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, probably about, well, it was 2003 or 4, I guess, many years ago. And you saw the film came out, what year was it? 2020. Well, we started working on, and the cumulative impacts law was passed in 2020. But we started working on cumulative impacts in 2007. That's when we formed our first, I did a deep dive into my computer. That's when we formed our first cumulative impacts committee. Right, so you can see how long it took to get to the point we passed the law. Never received any funding for it. All the work, never went unfunded. And we kept at it and kept at it. We call it kind of the holy grail of the EJ movement, because as you can see from the film, for years the EJ community said, well, you're going to put another polluting facility in our neighborhood? We have more than our fair share already. If you need another polluting facility, which we don't know if you do, but if you do need one, it needs to go somewhere else. It was almost like there was a law saying it had to go in poor white communities or communities of color or poor communities of color. Right? So this law was the first one of its kind that said that under certain conditions, environmental justice and cumulative impacts, Brianna told you about that, the total amount of pollution in the neighborhood, right? Because for a long time, you would get, well, you still do, what am I talking about? You still get polluting facilities come to the neighborhood, and like in Newark, they built a power plant there maybe a dozen years ago, and the folks in the neighborhood said, well, we don't want the power plant, right? We have too many polluting facilities. And the retort back from government would be, well, we've done studies to show that no laws would be violated. But the problem is the laws set individual standards, and there was no standard for all the pollution. And the community would say, but what we breathe in doesn't fit the law, because when we breathe in this pollution, it's not like it goes in different compartments in our lungs. It comes together, but your laws don't take that into account. And the community for years said, you've got to stop giving out, say this to government, you've got to stop giving out these air pollution permits. This makes no sense. This law was the first of its kind to say, under certain conditions, based on environmental justice and cumulative impacts, under certain conditions, permit applications for pollution, right? Pollution permit applications. They're legally polluting people to death. Right? Under certain circumstances, these permit applications must be denied. So it's the first law in the country that says that. We have another law in the country that says that in New York. And it's possibly even stronger, but the rules have not been have not been implemented or promulgated yet in New York, whereas they have been in New Jersey. So we are in the first stages of seeing the law implemented in New Jersey. We're in the first hearings. I went to one like maybe a week and a half ago. And the current issues now, so when I say permits can be denied, those are for new facilities. You do an environmental justice analysis. If it shows that it's going to put out pollution and make pollution higher in the neighborhood that would host the facility than other neighborhoods, then if you're a new facility, the permit has to be denied after you do that analysis. If you're not a new facility, though, and most facilities are not new, right? Most of them already have their permits before the law came about. Even if the analysis shows that you're adding pollution, the permit won't be denied. But conditions can be put on the permit to reduce the pollution. And that's what we're fighting right now. We're trying to convince New Jersey state government to reduce the existing amount of pollution when a permit comes up for renewal. Right? We're trying to convince them to say, well, it's not enough that you just won't add anymore. No, you have to actually reduce the amount that's there now. So that's the fight we're fighting right now. The last guy, just say I testified in a case a couple of weeks ago. The issue there is that there's an exception in the law that says that even if a facility pollutes and it serves a compelling public interest, it'll get a permit. And we're really afraid that all these facilities are going to come in and say, well, you can see what they're going to say, right? They're all going to be serving compelling public interest. So for the first time, the facility, I think this is the third one that's up for, that's come before the law, maybe the fourth. This is the first one that says, we are serving a compelling public interest, so even though we pollute, you should give us a permit. And we're trying to tell the state, you have to interpret that very narrowly, or else the law won't have any meaning. So that's where we are on the right now in fighting for the EJ law. And I think I'll stop there. We can talk more. I look forward to questions. Right. Other people need to speak. Thank you.
Why is a stronger EJ siting law important to the communities that Save the Sound represents?
Thanks, Brianna. Just to clarify, I think you're trying to be brief with the question, but I think you're referring to back in the 70s, the situation was a lot worse in the Island Sound region across the whole country, really. I mean, not that we've gotten as far as we should have, including under our environmental laws, but we at least have something, and especially in the Long Island Sound region, we have seen a lot of improvement over time. I just want to clarify that because that question could be understood as saying things are worse, are bad now, because they are bad now, but they have improved thanks to the passage and enforcement of environmental laws like the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act, and that's but that improvement can happen. Just having a law isn't enough. There has to be a way to enforce the rights that those laws create, which is why it's so troubling, as Brianna alluded to, and as Dr. Sheets alluded to as well, that while New York has this very promising environmental justice siting law, we don't have regulations to implement it. So we have this language that says things like permits shouldn't be granted in communities where they would add even a de minimis, it's the language, amount of pollution to an already overburdened community. But what does de minimis mean? What I think is de minimis might mean something different to a polluting corporation or to a politician who's backed by those polluting corporations. So that's not really an answer to your question. I just wanted to add a bit of that context. But what does this mean to the communities that Save the Sound serves? So one thing that I really like about working at Save the Sound and that I really like about Save the Sound's mission is that a big part of that is access to our waterways, access to green spaces, access to the places that enrich not just our bodies, but our minds and our health, and bring relaxation and joy. And I live in New York, I live in Brooklyn, and Save the Sound does serve Queens and the Bronx, since they are on the Sound. And one thing that I think about and I encounter a lot is people don't think of New York City as a coastal city, which is ridiculous when you just look at it. Anyone who's ever looked at a map, it's a coastal city, but we have so few water bodies that we can safely swim in, boat in, fish in. And under the Clean Water Act, we're supposed to be able to do all of those things. But what we have right now is clearly not enough in terms of laws and regulations to protect those rights that we are supposed to have to clean water. So that is a big part of Save the Sound's work, is doing that work, whether it's through our ecological restoration team, our water policy team, our legal team, just what I'm on, to clean up those waterways, make sure they stay clean, and that folks can be able to enjoy what they have. So for example, right now we recently filed a lawsuit against New York City to provide environmental protection that challenges their trying to short circuit there's a big regulatory issue here that I'm trying not to go into too deeply, but basically they are planning to, instead of actually reducing combined sewer overflows into Flushing Creek and Flushing Queens, they're proposing to chlorinate those overflows. So you'd still have everything else that comes with a combined sewer overflow going into Flushing Creek. It would just have less bacteria. And this is a community where the creek is surrounded by what New York calls disadvantaged communities. And these are communities that have this amazing resource right here, Flushing Creek and Flushing Bay, and they can't safely do anything really in that water body. People boat, etc. there anyhow, but they should be able to do so safely. So what would this law mean for the communities that, the environmental justice setting law, what would that mean for communities that Long Island, that Save the Sound serves? It would be another tool in the toolbox to do the kind of work that says, it's not enough to say, oh, we're putting this here because we have to put it here. You have to look at what that means for that community, what it means for what that community's endured over decades or centuries or what have you, and that would be huge for these communities.
Thank you for shedding. So yes, Dr. Sheets spoke to that. There is a law in New Jersey that was the first of its kind in 2020 to pass such a law. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the efforts that passed a law like that in New York in 2022, so just 2 years later. As Dr. Sheets mentioned, there are not any rules yet. They are to come, but we have been in the process of going back and forth with our regulating agency, Department of Environmental Conservation, to make sure they're as strong as possible to hold the law in place and defend our communities. The difference between New Jersey and New York's law are pretty similar, but in New York, why Dr. Sheets said it could be stronger is, like Dr. Sheets mentioned, the permits that are new in New York also would be pushed to be denied, so that there wouldn't be any more new polluting facilities in the community that's already overburdened by pollution. However, in New York, we also have a second part to the law that deals with the renewals. So the same facility like Covanta has been operating in this community for 20 years. It's expiring, so it's coming up for renewal. Then DEC could also make sure that they are, if they are significantly increasing pollution, they could be pushed to deny that as well. However, they're also making sure that the renewal facility would be reducing its pollution impact like we talked about earlier.
So I will pause there and I will pass it over to, we'll start with you, Monique. What brought you into this work and what local issues have you been facing in your community as a catalyst?
All right, thank you, Brianna. All right, I'm going to usher to stand. So we started a group in our community called Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group. A lot of you all are here today in that group. Shout out to the members. And I'm going to shout out Dr. Karim Otakhan in the back. His dynamic duo partner, Dr. Abna Asari, was the first one to tell us about this New Jersey law, the cumulative impacts law. So that's when I first heard about it. Abna brought it to our group and was like, this is something we should look at because our community is being overburdened by a whole bunch of pollution. I have a graphic here. So this is what our community looks like, and it does look like a war zone if you're looking at all these X's and O's and stuff like that. This is our North Belport community, and here is where the landfill is. And also a big shout out to Dr. Karim Otakhan for creating this map. We've been using it for like 3 years. Some of it is a little old because it's 3 years old and some of the stuff is a little different. But a lot of these circles are warehouses that were proposed, and they are in various different stages of being constructed. A lot of us are riding past on Station Road. We see a lot of the trees being torn down because 3 years ago when we created this, this map, this is what they were proposing, and now we're seeing it happen in real time. But all of this stuff, we can look at it later and talk about it more, but all of this stuff really is because we have this landfill here. And they have deemed this area a sacrifice zone, like they said in the film. And so all of these warehouses think that they can just come here and pollute. So yeah, we started looking at this law. We Act and others were promoting it in New York, so we decided to, follow and try to throw our hat in to help advance it. And so we are still working on that, and we're hoping that it helps us in our community because we dang sure need it. This big section here I'm going to highlight because we do believe that they're trying to bring a data center to our community right here. A lot of people have been reaching out about that, so we have to stay on top of it. So I'll close right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. We've talked a lot about local issues that folks are facing in their community. Can you tell us if you've ever taken on a local polluter and won?
That's a long, we don't have enough time for that. But what I will say is, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you to my colleagues here on the panel and the organizing organizations for continuing to work collectively, because this is a daunting task. Just watching the film, I was ready to cry again. I'm like, this is so much, it's so stressful, and all we want to do is just have a quality of life that we deserve and we pay the same taxes for. We buy a home, we think that we're going to have that old American dream, which I don't think exists anymore. And we have to deal with this. We have elected officials who are supposed to be elected to serve our best interests, and they do not. And so it's like always, we have a saying in the community, life is life. Many of us have multiple jobs. We can't go to these meetings in the local government, and the fact that they fail to represent the population that has elected them to represent our best interests is disheartening. And so we have taken on many fights with our local government, who also overextends us with extending tax breaks to these polluters as well. So not only are you killing us, you're actually bankrupting our schools and our local communities and depriving our economic So our ability to have access to the life that we see for ourselves is a real problem. So there have been a few things that we've been able to do locally. First, I came to this work. I moved here in my mid-20s, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to have a great life. And the next thing you know, there was a power panel that was proposed. Nicole here is one of my co-founders of what we call BRIC, which is Brookhaven Residents in Control. And at that time, we stopped a massive, what they intended to have a power plant. We were able to reduce that, get a settlement to change things with that. Then more recently, we had to worry about the largest land, transfer by rail in the history of the state of New York that would go through all of the communities of color. We worked on stopping that and also getting an easement for the property so that if there's anything else that needs to be done, that we would be considered. But it's an ongoing fight. It's that compounding interest of, okay, it's not the landfill, it's this new factory, it's the data centers, it's the compost yards, it's the, you want to put a waste transfer station in a residential community, and these people have been living here. So it's the compounding interest that we have to continue to fight. And with the power of the NAACP on a local, a state, and a national level, we are committed to making sure that we have justice in the environment and climate and our everyday lives. And so it's been important for us to do this work because, again, it is traditional racism, discrimination, structural, institutional, to all of the people who live in these communities. As my colleagues have said here, there's only one reason why these are in communities that look like me. There's only one reason for that, and we cannot just take on all of these issues in a community that's supposed to be classified as an EJ site, or even before these things came up, classified as a non-attainable air zone, to now put more pollutants in, where we do have a high level of asthma, we have a high level of cancer. Even in a local school, a third grade elementary school, you have teachers that have large rates of cancer, and then the studies are done, and what they say, oh, there's nothing, and they always find a mitigating reason to make it a regional thing for us. So we're going to continue to fight and stand on the guidelines. We are volunteers, we're not trained scientists, we're organizers and community people in activism. So we need everybody to help us to keep that eye on the ball, because just when you think you can come up for air, you can't, because the air is staggering with all of the isms and the pollutions that we deal with on a regular basis.
Brief, warehouses, how do they pollute? Warehouses bring truck traffic. And one of the studies that were done with that elementary school that Dr. Brick was talking about, they found that the biggest polluter was coming from the truck traffic. And again, this is all going to the landfill, going to these warehouses, and all of these things are accumulating, and it's causing poor air quality in a concentrated area. And then the other part about warehousing is, especially where we live, they are tearing down our forestry. Where we live is in the Pine Barren.
Well, they don't think it
Yes.
starts somewhere else.
Yes.
They don't want to give that to us.
They have preserved Pine Barren on Long Island, but they have not preserved it in our area. So if folks are not familiar with the Pine Barren, what happens is the Pine Barren is basically our life's blood, because when the rain comes down, it filters through the Pine Barren into our aquifer, and that is what we use to drink and do all the things on Long Island, right? Our aquifer. So we have to save that and make sure that it's preserved. And our Pine Barren is in the middle of the island, right? Right where the landfill is, right where all these warehouses are, where they're tearing down the trees, where they're building up speculative warehousing, and possibly, again, I just want to sound the alarm a little bit on this data center that we believe is coming to our community. So that will also be pulling resources from our community, the water. It'll add to the sound issue in our community where these down sounders are loud, right? So, again, like this film is called The Sacrifice Zone. These things bring other things, right? Dr. Greer Key talked about Caithness. Caithness power plant is over there too. So all of these things start to accumulate, and then we have these warehouses. And if you've gone around, we have industrial parks in the area of warehouses that are underutilized, right? And I see my friend in the back, Dr. Karim. These warehouses and developers are billion or $1 million corporations, and they are getting sweetheart deals from the IDA. And they are not paying their taxes, they are underfunding our schools, and so it accumulates all of these things. So I don't know if you wanted to add something to this, because I know you're steeped in here too.
No, I think you did a good job. And I think in terms of settlement, there's certain preclusions and things that you cannot talk about in terms of settlement, but I will tell you is that we did make a great right-of-way with slowing and stopping that rail. The other thing that was important too is because it was public land that they were trying to steal, that we do have an easement that they can't do anything on that land unless they contact us. But it's really important to understand the corruption, that you can just change a law and take parkland that was supposed to be used for something else and try to turn it into private hands. So, I mean, the level of coming from the town with undergirding the community and our wishes, it just never stops. So today we'll pick this up, and then tomorrow there'll be something else. And the big part of it is, yes, looking at the IDA giving these sweetheart deals, just as if you look at the host benefit package that we had with Caithness, there was some terms in there that were not met. Money was pushed to certain areas that shouldn't have been. So I think I heard my colleagues say earlier, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. It is great for us to have the law, but you see it every day. This is what I say to my students. You see someone driving using the cell phone, don't you? And we know that you're not supposed to do that. But who is going to catch you? And when they catch you, what is going to be the fine? So it's not enough for us to just have the law. We need to have implementation of real penalties that will stop them. They need to know that the community is here. They know we're not here. We're here. They have secret meetings. We busted up meetings at Stony Brook and all kind of stuff. They will go around you. They will pack meetings with union members who want the jobs to build the things, and we certainly understand that. We just want them to stop trying to kill us.
And I know you asked about Covanta. That would take a little bit of time to really get through, but Covanta, there was a whistleblower that worked for Covanta. That Western Coalition was also helping with the Caithness fight way back in the days. And we've been doing a lot of work statewide, and so this is how we've been able to connect with so many different people and help to bring everyone that's here together. So shout out to LIPC and all the staff and interns and everybody here.
I'll make a quick point also. So Dr. Sheets made a quick mention about our Environmental Justice Leadership Forum, maybe not necessarily a name, but WEAC does have a national coalition. I believe it's 44 organizations in 22 states, and not all of those states are, bright blue bastions of progressiveness. Some of these places have elected officials that make Lee Zeldin look like smoking bear. So there's lots of places where we can work together, but also sort of learn a lot of the tactics that these folks use where, maybe they're in quote unquote Cancer Alley, maybe they're in, Texas, maybe they're in Alaska, where things are a constant fight, where you don't see those wins that sort of chip away at things. A settlement would be a godsend. So it is, again, this is kind of a microcosm, but it is a powerful thing to be part of something where you're like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. There's a lot of people dealing with this. But I think one of the challenges, but also one of the positives is, you know, coming out to something like this, to get involved and to listen and to talk. She's like, oh, okay, you know what? It's not just me. There's other people. Shout out.
If you are interested in the Environmental Justice Leadership Forum, just talk to myself, Carla, or Claire afterwards, and we can see what we can do to get you in a network of folks that are working all across the country on fighting fights and winning. So I want to give us we're near the end here of our program, and want to tie this up in a bow as much as I can of why we're here, why we invited you all out here today, and again, thank you for joining us. So like I mentioned, in New York, the rules for the environmental justice citing law are not complete. We are just about, and this is an announcement I heard just this week, just about to see how the first phase of this law, of this regulation, was rolled out by DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation. That had some public input that was heard from the community, and we tried to inform folks this was coming, of the opportunity for public comment last year. And so this is 1 year after public comment closed. We're going to see finally within a week, 2 weeks, what DEC came away with from that public comment engagement process and how it's going to impact our law in New York. The opportunity for public comment is not over. There are 2 more opportunities that are coming, and this is again going to be a longer term fight. Within the next coming weeks, we will also see how DEC is going to provide guidance to these facilities for putting together a report of how they're polluting our facilities. So that is coming, and that will be open again for public comment shortly. And then there's another part of how these facilities, how DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, will be making these decisions about whether or not to allow or deny a permit, how they will be going about making those decisions, and how the law will impact that as well. The rules for that have not been released. Discussions have been had. But again, we need community input at all stages of this process. That's why we're here, to inform you of the opportunity, to inform you of why this is so important. And so you all are now part of this. And if you hadn't already, did our sign-in sheet at the front. That is how we will get in contact with you and inform you of the public comment opportunities, what resources are there. If you're seeing a polluting facility come to your neighborhood that you do not want to be there, who can you contact? That would be us. There are resources on this table here with more information and specifics about the law that I'm talking about tonight. So this is a community forum for you all to have learned about these issues and know what to do should you be impacted by them as well. Okay, so again, I want to thank you all for being here, and I will wrap us up by doing some closing remarks from you all. What resources, advice, or advocacy tools would you want communities to be aware of in the fight of cumulative impact?